so much for joining us. Welcome to everyone who's joined us tonight for the 2020 Sunshine Coast Property Market Update. I'm not going to lie to you, Caroline, I am worried about the front row. This man's looking very comfortable.
That's right. This is actually the first time I've walked into a cinema since COVID. So we are Mark and Caroline, we are your MCs for tonight. If you don't know, we are normally from 92.7 Mix FM, we do a breakfast show together.
Now, we are here to learn from an exceptional panel of property experts about what's happening right now on the Sunshine Coast, but more importantly, what's coming and how we can all benefit from it.
But before we get into it, just a couple of housekeeping notes for you. I'm sure you're all very well aware of the COVID safety requirements, but please ensure you maintain social distancing when up and about. And if you feel unwell at any time, please let one of our event team or staff know how you feel.
Or just go back to Victoria. Toilets are located outside the cinema, just across the hall. The Gold Class Bar and the Candy Bar are open for you just outside here for any snacks or refreshments, that kind of thing. And of course, in case of emergency, please follow the green exit signs in the direction of the cinema staff.
What's occurring in Queensland's Sunshine Coast is so significant, it's so dramatic, and it's changing the region forever.
Now, a perfect combination of events that are completely unprecedented for any city in Australia, plus the impact of COVID-19 has only fast-tracked the growth of this region in population and, of course, housing prices.
And you've probably noticed that the Sunshine Coast property market is in a flurry right now. I live in Alex, and I reckon they put up a sign and then they whack a sold sign on it the next morning. Homes are selling fast, some within 24 hours of market. Rentals are seeing dozens of applicants offering over and above asking rent. There's a shortage of land because of such high demand, and new investors are entering the market. The conditions really are perfect for first-time buyers.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to rent a house in Townsville that's not going well. Is anyone to buy a house? No. So, we're here to tell you what's happening and what's up next for the property market. So, let's introduce our team here.
I'm just going to wait for the nod from Leslie. We're ready to go with our introductions. We are good to go. All right, then we are going to start with the star of the show, Mel Cayley, who is the director and co-founder of Direct Collective. The Direct Collective is a team of property experts delivering specialised services through their brands Direct Agents, Direct Rentals, Direct Hotels, Investor Property, and the First Home Buyers Academy.
Mel's background in finance, property development and real estate industries has seen him forge a reputation for his operational and marketing capacity, depth of research and analysis, creativity and integrity of delivery.
Now, prior to the property sector, Mal learned his trademark skill of risk assessment, information management and analysis, operational entrepreneurialism and leadership during more than 17 years as a member of the Australian Army.
Now, after being approached by a multinational company to raise a new business unit for them, Mal left the Army to become a consultant to business on specialist security matters.
Looking for greater challenges and with a passion for property, Mal set a course that has seen him apply his experience to the property industry and to the pioneering of business methodologies and products with his business partner Adam, continuously setting their offering apart in the minefield that is the property sector.
Malcolm, welcome. Now we have Brooke Monahan, Mr. Malcolm, and up. We'll wait for Brooke's slide. Brooke has close to 20 years experience in property development, design, construction, finance and funds management. Brooke Monahan brings a wealth of knowledge to his role as founder and managing director of Mosaic Property Group.
Mosaic is a fully integrated design-led development and construction business operating predominantly in Southeast Queensland. Mosaic is a unique property group with a holistic approach that sees it control the entire development cycle from research and acquisition through detailed design, development, marketing, sales and construction, right through to managing the assets upon completion.
Now, with over $1 billion worth of projects either delivered or under construction and a further substantial pipeline of additional high-end residential and mixed-use projects planned across Southeast Queensland in the next 5 years, With more than 110 team members, over 2,000 consultants and subcontractors, Mosaic is a highly regarded and awarded leader in the industry, contributing significantly to Queensland's economy.
Brooke is also a director and co-founder of the Mosaic Foundation, which provides support to organisations that tackle the provision of shelter for those in desperate need, as well as mental health initiatives. Thanks for being here, Brooke.
All right, next up is David Neverton, and David is Director of Pacific Law, a Sunshine Coast law firm specialising in acting for property investors, property developers, high net worth individuals and corporate businesses.
With clients with development sites across Australia, the Pacific Law team helps clients with all aspects of the development process, including determining the correct buying entity for a project, negotiating the land contract, purchasing the site, reviewing building contracts and loan agreements, as well as creating the off-the-plan sale contracts and a lot more.
Whether it be helping on the conveyance of a simple investment property or a large-scale development of building or land, talk to Pacific Law early in the process. Welcome, David.
All right, we also welcome here Josh Green, who is the General Manager of Osmar Homes. Osmar are quality, multi-award-winning new home builders on the Sunshine Coast and have been awarded the HIA Professional Builder of the Year Award 3 years in a row.
Now, Josh has graduated to his current position as General Manager of Osmar Homes, having served in a number of roles with the company, and he's always worked in the building industry and is a very, well, as I put the page, enthusiastic about creating enjoyable experiences for his clients that exceeds their expectations. He's also a very generous man. We call him a lot and ask for stuff, and he generally says yes, so we're very happy with that.
Yes, sometimes I think he actually screens our calls. And last but certainly not least, we have Lorna Willis. And Lorna is the founder. We've actually just had a chat to Lorna tonight. It's an amazing organisation, the WOW Group and WOW Property Women. Lorna has a story that covers almost every genre you can think of, and her property story still continues as she forges her way forward, being involved in some pretty significant developments through persistence and passion. She continues to build a solid, reputable name as a remarkable female property developer.
With over 35 years in property experience, Lorna's experience is vast and varied. Previously an architectural designer, gaining experience on a variety of projects for clients. Lorna stepped out on her own business to pursue property developing on a full-time basis back in 2004. Since then, her passion for property has been targeted towards commercial and larger size developments, directing her own projects from town planning right through to completion. Can we give a big round of applause to our guests, please?
Alright, that's big. That's because they've done a whole lot of stuff. Now what we're going to do now is fire a few questions to each of our panellists, and then we'll open up the floor to your questions as well. Now tonight we'll be using a system called Pigeonhole to take questions. Pigeonhole is really simple. It's an interactive mobile website where you can submit questions to the panellists. So if you've got a smartphone or a tablet with you at the moment, just go to pigeonhole.at, then type in the event passcode, which is SCPMU. Once again, that's SCPMU, which stands for Sunshine Coast Property Market Update. So that's how you remember the acronym. If you have any questions throughout the event, just feel free to submit them through Pigeonhole. We've got a team here, but there's people online who aren't here and can't answer them live, but we have got a team that will take your questions. Just submit them on Pigeonhole.
Okay, so are we ready to roll there? Are we good to go? Okay. What I want to start with is an understanding of what's happening at the moment. So, Brooke, if you could tell us a little bit about current buyers of your developments, where they're coming from, and what is really popular at the moment.
Yeah, look, it obviously differs depending on your product and where your projects are located. I think for Mosaic, most of our product on the Sunshine Coast and to be really frank across Brisbane and the Gold Coast as well, which I think gives some context to the Sunny Coast market is on the coast market it's connected to water, so that's the beachfront, riverfront in Brisbane, that's connected to the river or CBD, so close in that sort of 2 to 5k radius. It's obviously been a pretty interesting year, and there was all sorts of, and I don't want to get too far off that field, but I think it is relevant to the top buyers that we're seeing now, and the response, particularly over this last few months, as conferences improved quite substantially. I think Queensland certainly leading the way in the national context. All of our buyers in our projects, are predominantly local, so local can cover everywhere, right? So we've got buyers buying into our sort of beachfront, roof-front projects in the Sunshine Coast that come from Brisbane. We've got some that come from overseas. I think what's been really interesting is that even though that's a relatively small percentage of our buyer profile, I'd say the bulk of that, 70% of our buyers come from within 4 or 5 postcodes to where our project's located. So really well supported locally. We do extremely well in the Brisbane market, particularly for those looking to buy a secondary home or luxury home connected to the coast. And inquiry from overseas in the States improved and increased a fair bit since about June, July this year. Really that's starting to turn through sales. We're seeing more locals too, I think the expat market that have got a strong connection back into the Sunshine Coast. We're starting to see people reassess their options around lifestyle choices, which I think a lot of people have done through this COVID period. So, people bringing forward buying decisions that they might have considered putting off for another 5 or 6 years. We've got people, expats offshore, where they grow up the Sunshine Coast and they bought a property office on the basis that they were told that because they can see where the market's going, and if it's a riverfront property, they know that it's going to be really difficult to replicate that in the future, right? So buying based on the view that the market is not going to present those opportunities at that prices at any point again in the future, so putting a foothold, but on the basis they might come back for 5 years. Now those people start to reassess about moving back a lot sooner. So the buyer profile is still predominantly South East Queensland. Inquiry definitely strong from southern states to the luxury in the market. Biggest challenge for us is we don't have much stock there. So trying to place people at the moment, we think those inquiry levels in Sydney and Melbourne will increase a fair bit. We obviously know that Melbourne has a strong connection to Noosa, but we're seeing a broader response other than just Melbourne to Noosa. We think Maroochydore and Coolum, in particular for us, connected to the beach and riverfront, is a really strong inquiry from luxury buyers looking to get a foothold in the Sunshine Coast market.
Great, thank you very much. Now, are you finding the same thing across your businesses?
Yes, very much so. So, excuse me. The direct agents business, if you look at where the buyer inquiry is coming from there, it is predominantly local, buying in the established market, vast majority from Queensland. The interesting thing about watching the Sunshine Coast market is where they're coming from. So even though they're local, they might be buying, living here on the Sunshine Coast. The question is also how long they've been here. So, there's a lot of people who moved here, haven't yet had the opportunity to buy, and now buying. A lot of people who have come back to the coast. So you talk about the expat market, families that have moved into state who've decided now's the right time, post-COVID, to come home and try to re-establish themselves here. And so that's putting a lot of pressure also on the rental market as well. So I'm sure we'll get into the state of supply, but it's predominantly local. But there is certainly, I just noticed young George from Direct Agents who's sitting here. He sold a property recently. You would have said it was too much for what it was, but it was sight unseen from a Melbourne buyer. Just saw great value in what it was on the waterfront. And so we're seeing a bit of that, but that's probably only sort of 10 to 15% of the market.
All right, and what about you, Josh and Osmar, with your new builds and house and land packages? I'm sure there's been a big increase.
Yeah, definitely. We're exceptionally busy at the moment, but probably a little bit different to Brooke. Most of our stuff is the local market. A lot of first home buyers are getting into the market now because of the grants and the boost. And we're getting a lot of people who are looking for affordability. So our terrace stock at the moment, which we've been heavily involved with recently, is really popular. So it's that first home buy market for us, and also our custom home clients. People are spending more money. COVID hasn't really affected their budgets too much. They've still got plenty of it, so they've got healthy budgets and they're building custom homes at the moment. And it is those locations. We're doing a lot of stuff around Coolum at the moment. Those waterfront areas is kind of where those people are looking to tip their money at the moment. First home buyers for us is a massive market right now.
What about you, David? You're in the legal work to see lots of these build contracts go through. I can only imagine the volume that you're processing right now. In fact, I'm amazed someone let you out of the office.
Yeah, let me out. I don't know what's going on there. Look, it's really interesting for us. We've had probably like a lot of consultants, all of the month where COVID first hit, it was like, okay, what's going to happen here? Then we had a flurry of developers and probably investors who came to us and sort of said, look, we need to either sell properties, downsize, consolidate debt. There was that rush. And And then all of a sudden, for 6 months, we've had that absolute push, which is just, we're been up 25-30% on all sort of numbers where people have been buying. But as the boys have just sort of said, it's both the first home buyers market, as well as the more sophisticated investors, as well as the downsizers, as well as the developers. So it's sort of coming all shapes and sizes at the
Yeah,
moment.
it's interesting, it's everyone at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, now, Lorna, you've got a few development projects on the go. Have sales and interest been solid for you? Has there been a spike?
Well, we've got obviously a new project about to launch, which is Luana Beach Resort, just over here. So we haven't even gone to the market with that one, but tomorrow, ask me again, and we might have. We've had a lot of interest in that. So and that's a little bit different demographic in that one. I'm a baby boomer, so naturally I think of the baby boomers. And so with that, it's about convenience. It's about aging the home. As we see with COVID, there's been some scares. Who wants to end up in a nursing home, for goodness sake? So we're starting to think differently, but it's also about entertaining for the family. So we've got some short-term accommodation in there, we've got commercial in there and that as well. But reflecting to one that we're doing as a subdivision, a land subdivision at Nambour, Chilwood, that's taken off, and that's been a lot to do with the incentives for the first home buyers and also the government incentives. So depends where your demographic is and where your location is, it's very relevant.
Now, we have talked a little bit about the land shortage tonight. Now, this is something you've seen coming for a while now. In fact, I think people have told me that there was an article that you wrote in 2013 about the land. There's an article right now, something we prepared earlier. So tell us how you knew when I was in that we had land shortage.
Well, you can't know. So no one can see the future. But it's about, it's fundamentally about modelling and about the modelling that you use. So we're very focused, everyone pretty much, overestimates what they can achieve in 12 months and but entirely underestimates what can be achieved over 5 to 10 years. And our lives are particularly geared more and more so around immediate information now. And when you look at a lot of raw data analysis type models, you've only got to look at the history. So you've got to look at the modelling of what people are talking about. So banks might be relatively good in a short period of time, but if you look at what they said 12 months ago, they're pretty much 100% wrong. There's a lot of spruikers out there that will be promoting a particular message, but that message is around what they want to achieve a specific outcome, and what you've got to look at is what's the consequence if they're wrong. They might be selling a book, for example, those people that have been preaching since 2002 that our property market is going to fall by 40%, and they'll come out here each year, not in COVID, but they'll have a new book and preach that message. Whereas what we look at is what we put our money behind, what we do from a business, and we look at what the trends are, what the models are, and we build a profile around the course of action that could happen in the market based on things that are present. So what we looked at back then was the fact that there was already an undersupply starting to occur, the lack of approvals, the increasing rate of people moving to the Sunshine Coast, and then even back then, some game-changing infrastructure, which if you look at where that kind of infrastructure, such as the new hospital being built from a greenfield or where there hadn't been one before, the impact of such infrastructure and what that then does to jobs and further demand and the like. So what we're looking at then, what was proposed in 2013 was to say that we're already starting to hit a bit of an undersupply. If these factors continue as we are, within 10 years we're going to have a serious problem. Not only do all the positive things start unfolding, the infrastructure, the jobs, and people coming here has brought forward that from what we said within 10 years, and it's occurred within 7 years, only now being fast-tracked as a result of COVID.
Yeah, so obviously demand's gone up, and you were mentioning positivity. How did teams like CoreLogic say the exact opposite of what you were saying in the last 10 years?
Okay, so there's a really good example of that is at the start of COVID, for example, CoreLogic put out a report saying that because our population has 15% of our employment is related to tourism, we're likely to be the most risky property market through COVID, which we declared a few other things, because it's about getting below the stack and understanding what's actually going on. So they're a large data house, they've got a theoretical understanding of the data, for example. What we look at is what's actually happening. In that case, if you look at our tourism and employment, I was part of a task force through Direct Hotels looking at about how we can improve employment in that space, because we had an effective undersupply for demand and where we're going. Understanding the impact of tourism on the Sunshine Coast and how we're less impacted by international tourists than others, and the potential bounce back, meaning that that undersupply of tourism workers wasn't just going to be prevalent on the other side of COVID, it was going to be exacerbated. But the key one is what is the average income of a tourism worker and the houses that they intend to buy. You know, so you could then talk around the rental market, but that then comes back to understanding how people have been living on the Sunshine Coast, and how people have been sharing houses because of the lack of availability and affordability. So it's getting below the stack to understand what's actually going on.
Sure. Okay, so you've all got a great track record on the Sunshine Coast and property market predictions. I'm sure everyone in the room and online are waiting to hear what happens next, what is coming next for property. So we might go through all the panelists, but we'll start with you, Paul. What happens next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's the one we want to know. I suspect what most of the people here tonight, I think the key with all this stuff, Mal spoke about, the group think that commoditised thinking where everybody consumes the same information, therefore forms the same opinion. We saw that a lot over the last 6 months. There wasn't a major economist, certainly not a major bank economist in the country that didn't have a fairly bearish view on Australian residential property prices, not just the Sunshine Coast, and they've all shifted quite substantially over the last 3 months. ANZ being the last to fall about 2 weeks ago. We were one of the most bearish banks through that process. So, we have a really strong research house at Mosaic. It forms an understanding of where we look to try and buy sites at the top of the product that we develop over time, responding to market demands. And what, I think some of the information that's come out during COVID, and what we started off, we're talking about a 100-year health pandemic, but there was no label for how it was going to play out. Like Mal said, no one really knew, but our view was that there would be a fairly coordinated response from our government. The Morrison government was newly elected, and that most of the impact on employment was going to be at the lower end of the sector. So tourism and hospitality, like Mal said, typically less exposed to housing. And so we've seen all that play out. To get to the point and answer the question, we sort of ran a Crossing the Bridge series throughout March, April, May, June, through sort of August and September on sort of an alternative view around how we saw this playing out. And a lot of that, if anything, we're probably a little bit on the bearish side of where it has played out, but along the same times, and that is that, you're in a once-in-a-generation infrastructure boom here in South East Queensland, and of course all our markets, including the Sunshine Coast. Australia has become a less desirable place to live at a sort of global health pandemic. Like, you look at that, right? So we've stable property rights for an older nation, unlimited food, we've got a great health system, great education system. There's more and more people that want to move here, and with the vaccine in play, I think more broadly for most of the developed world, by the middle of next year, you'll start to see borders open up, particularly with the efficacy of the current successful vaccine candidate. So what that means is that, we were pretty bullish on South East Queensland property from late 21 through sort of 23, 24. We think that's probably brought forward a little bit, in that you've had, we've dealt with the virus, but in any other place in the world, including New Zealand, and we've had a response in terms of both the fiscal and the central bank response, which is now the greatest response on a per capita GDP basis than any other country in the world. So a massive response which has been highly effective in stopping people losing their jobs and helping to recover. We think, retail spending and employment and credit growth performs far better than anything other than ACS over the next 12 months. We think you probably get back to unemployment just over 6% by the next year. So employment recovers, and you've got the biggest expansion of credit at the lowest interest rates in history, and you're undersupplied in your real estate, and more people that want to move to Australia, and then on a local context, want to move to South East Queensland, then we think that's pretty supportive of property prices. And I don't think we've seen sort of set up in conditions like this since probably 2001.
Yeah, okay. All right, Lorna, so what about you? You might have some theories on what's going to happen next in the local property market. Obviously, you've got a lot of confidence being involved in your big brand new development just down the road.
Yeah, obviously it is a big, large development of 112 apartments and 5 commercial. So it didn't start now. It started 5 years ago. Like the confidence that I had when I first came to Queensland 7 years ago, was seeing all the infrastructure that was going in. And this is all before COVID. This is obviously some foresight by government officials. Like when you drive down the highway, you see double diamonds of ramps going to paddocks. You go, there must be something happening, right? I saw it in Victoria, 4.5 families moving per day into our region and the growth that happened. So I could see all that, and you know, the hospital and the UE Global, all those sorts of things all added up. So it was like, I was really excited. Obviously I didn't know about the undersea cable, but that's also come to fruition. You hear about the route to your CBD. Like, who gets to do that? Build a city from the inside out. I mean, it's all unique, so it's all part of what stacks up. But I think COVID has actually exasperated it into terms of we are in such a lucky country. We live in such a beautiful paradise. Who wouldn't want to live here? We're a safe unit here. So of course it's appealing to everyone.
Yeah, it all adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So David, what about you? You work with investors and developers. Have you seen any change in that market? What do you think is coming?
Excuse me, I think we probably elaborate on what Brooke said, which is very much as a strong position going forward. We've got a lot of investors that come from down south and invest in our market up here, particularly in the Sunshine Coast and in South East Queensland, because their property prices are probably a little bit less than what it is down south. So it's a good opportunity from an investment point of view at a lower price point. So that's exciting. But look, I think Sunshine Coast is the whole knowing people that are moving out of the city into an area that we have a lifestyle, as Lorna sort of said, we've got a lifestyle here, a lovely lifestyle. We can afford to, still have a corporate business and run from here. We can use technology, and that's really exciting. There's some particular people, I suppose, that are going, where in Australia do I want to be?
And we're changing the way we work, aren't we? So that, people, even the big guns, are going to be working from home and working from the Sunshine Coast.
This is true. So Josh from Osmo, if I could just ask you that, with that change in, work sort of style, people working from home, that kind of thing, will you see a trend in new homes? Will there be a shift in the way you build?
Yeah, we're seeing a bit of a shift, and I think what's going to happen is migration. Everyone's talking about that on the panel already. So I think once the borders open up and people are starting to move back or move to the coast from interstate, we're going to start to see those shifts in what people are looking for in their homes. There's already talk about people wanting the media rooms, the studies again, because people are spending more time in their homes again. They're not out at the beach as much as they were, and they think that's what they need now, so that's going to drive a bit of what the demand's going to be looking into the future very shortly. So yeah, for us, we're looking heavily at the migration sector and what that's going to bring to the coast. I think in terms of who we're building for currently with the locals, there's only so many people on the coast that are going to build, but that migration is going to be where our drive is for home building, for contract builds and mums and dads, and the trends are changing. I think acreage style, the real estate market is selling sight unseen. We've done probably 4 or 5 contracts with interstate clients who haven't even been here, haven't seen a block of land, never met them face to face. We've signed a building contract and we'll start building very shortly. I think that's going to become the norm. People are going to be doing that more and more. The real estate's leading that charge right now because people are buying houses unseen, and they're doing the same with us for building a home. So traditionally, you're trying to lock into one of those play homes and spend weeks and months with a consultant getting the house exactly right, but they're taking the plunge and they're doing it online, and we've got the facilities now to be able to do that, so that's fantastic.
Right. So even the way people are buying houses completely shifted as well.
Once
Yeah.
I need to walk in and touch it, open it, turn the door handle, make sure it can squeak, all that stuff, but yeah, it's a different market now, it's very, very different.
Yeah. So Mal, Master Predictor, what do you think is going to happen next?
Well, that's a good question. So there's a couple of parts. What our modelling is actually best at is the next 3 to 5, so I'll touch on that. But if you look at what's happening through the various businesses who the clients we're working with through investor property, through direct agents, the properties we're managing through direct rentals and the like. The things that we're seeing now are what we've been talking about, for 10 years, but they're unfolding faster and with more significance. So 3 years ago, I used to talk about the unprecedented set of circumstances on the Sunshine Coast. Once I understood what the cable meant, and that's a bold statement, I don't think anyone understands what it really means. So it's, like I described in the past, it's like holding a Nokia 5110 and trying to imagine the iPhone 11. You just can't do it. You know, it's the change in technology and what's going to happen through the world. And this is the only regional city on the globe that has a connection like we will have. And we'll have a faster connection to all of Asia than anyone in the mainland US or anyone else in Australia. So when you look at the effect of that, I started using a term about a once in history type event. What's happening through COVID and what's likely to unfold and the acceleration that we'll see over the next 2 years, I believe, I'm willing to say we'll never see, have never seen what's about to happen on the Sunshine Coast of any market. I would never say never in the future, but I think it's unlikely that we'll ever see something that's going to unfold on the Sunshine Coast over the next 3 years.
And so what can residents and investors do with that information? Should they just run out and buy anywhere, anything they can get their hands on?
Well, that really is information, it's just a statement. So anything that you look to do in property is relative to you and your circumstances. So if you're looking to invest, it's really about the outcomes you're trying to achieve, the timeline, etc. If you're looking to sell, if you were looking to sell in this market and then wait till after Christmas to buy again, it'd be a really foolish thing to do in my view right now because you'll miss out. I only heard a story today of a lady looking to buy an Alex who pre-COVID thought this is going to be great, Mark's going to come back, I can finally afford, and the same property that they could have bought pre-COVID is now 150,000 more. So it really is an individual question and talking to someone specifically around what you want to do and getting that advice.
So all this information sounds very positive for people who already own property on the Sunshine Coast, and people particularly, I guess, have some savings who are ready to go. But what about first home buyers or people without savings or wanting to get into the market? Are they just going to be priced out? I mean, we've all got kids. What are our kids going to do?
Yeah, Australia doesn't have an affordability issue, they have an entry affordability issue, and that is the real question. So if you look at older and established markets, just more and more people rent, and the wealthy and organisations own property. So we've peaked at 70% home ownership, that's already in decline, but it'll be down 60% within probably the next 6 or 7 years. So it's harder and harder to get in. So now's the opportunity. There is an opportunity now to leverage the equity that will be created. But again, it's about getting the information because most people think that they can't, who can. That's true for anyone in the property market because they just don't have the knowledge. They're just not putting into people experience enough to be able to show them. So find someone who can help you. This is great. This is the first time buyers academy. Just as an aside. But there are opportunities. You talk about the stuff Josh was saying about some of that terrace product. So really sharply priced product. It's not about buying a dream home. If you buy something that you can invest in, and then you can duplicate that in 5 years or 10 years time, you can buy a dream home for the same price you could have bought it now, plus the capital growth. But over those investments, you can have cash flow, you build a portfolio, you go and live in that dream home, and then put some extra cash in the bank.
And with government incentives, and we were joking with Josh before about the fact that our kids have saved a lot of money since COVID because they haven't been able to go to the pub. Which is just, but it sounds so basic, but it's actually real. Like the kids have got money in their pockets now more than they have, and Terrace has those sort of things. Maybe they will be able to get into this booming market if they talk to the right people.
A couple of great partners around 2 ideas.
All right, great. So I think we're ready to open up to the floor. If there are any questions, Lizzie's going to let us know if there's any questions come through online. Just remember to use Pigeonhole if you're listening online and you've got a question for our panel. We would love to hear from you. So how are we going there, Lizzie? Is there anyone in the crowd that would mind asking a question, something that you might want to get a bit more information about?
I've got a few questions that have come from online, so I'll fire them to you guys. Someone wants to know about the CBD being sold to a developer and what does that mean for the coast?
You got that one?
Yeah, so as far as the contract they're talking about, I guess it's a $2.5 billion contract for Waterpack and the delivery of the rest of that service. So that's a great outcome. I think that the CBD has been a master plan project for many, many years in the making, and the work that's been done there over the last 3 to 4 years to get to the stage where you're seeing the first lot of commercial buildings and closely followed on that residential buildings in stage 1. I think that the new contract being awarded just accelerates the delivery of that master plan, as opposed to a fragmented approach which would have taken a lot longer. So I actually think the net benefit is that the CBD's stages 1, 2 and 3 get brought forward, which, for an overall benefit to Sunshine Coast is a really positive thing.
Okay, great, thanks, Brooke. Something else there, Francis?
The airport, the expansion of the airport, but now with COVID and tourism, what's going to happen now?
Expansion of the airport, that's a really important one, I think.
I'll just touch on it quickly because I covered it off before. I think the thing that we need to just remember is the only reason that airports are shut and there's no travel is because of the virus. There is no other reason, right? So it's the response in dealing with the health issue. And if you look at where the health issue is now at, I think it's unequivocal that there will be multiple successful vaccine candidates in play by the first quarter of 2021. With the Oxford data came out this week, which is really relevant to us because that is the most that we have secured under a federal government contract for 50 million doses for the first quarter next year. So, my view is, and the other one is the accuracy and efficacy of those viruses, so the percentage of people that have benefits, and most of them are coming in at the moment around 90% or above, which is well above expectations. So all that means for people who aren't up to speed with this, the high level of efficacy means that less number of people need to be vaccinated before you are able to open up borders again. So I think the really critical thing to understand is that piece of infrastructure is a piece of infrastructure that benefits the Sunshine Coast for decades to come. There was a short-term blip around the delivery of that asset relative to COVID turning up. My view is that interstate borders will be mostly open. I think you saw today that Queensland's finally opening to Sydney on the 1st of December, and the expectation is that Melbourne will closely follow thereafter. So then all you need then is international borders, and our view is that they'll be mostly open by the middle of next year. And then we think the skates are really on for the Sunshine Coast place that.
Especially since the international airport hasn't had a real go at it yet.
No.
It's sort of ready to go.
Maybe on
now.
steroids.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things on there. So the first one, just remember that the airport and the CBD were delivered by council. So there's 2 reasons why we have a housing crisis on the Sunshine Coast right now. One is a failure in planning and delivery, creating a massive undersupply. But the other one is incredible, courageous job creation projects like the airport, like the CBD that council have driven. So, they need kudos for doing those. But the thing to keep in mind about the airport, it's actually not about tourism, it's about commerce. The real benefit to this region, it will be the jobs that will be created because we're not trade. And so, there's a bit of tourism going on, so the flights to Cairns are now 95% full, and apparently we're about to hear about a couple of others opening up where we currently have to drive south to go north, so expect to be Townsville, Palmer, Rockhampton. So, again, that would be great for the business for the coast.
We've got another question, Alison?
I do. Someone wants to know what are the best suburbs to buy in?
You'd have to be Richard or Coolum, wouldn't it?
So where you start.
It depends who you ask.
And I think that's such a
Doesn't matter.
specific question to the person, the relevant person, as to their circumstances. It's a pretty difficult one to answer. Right? But I think the Sunshine Coast obviously is such a positive spot to be. Where else would you want to be other than the coast at the moment with the opportunity that's here, especially in the Rank region? I think as sort of Brooke mentioned, there's some pretty attractive stuff over here.
I think more would say Diana.
I have another one.
Sure.
How do we fix the rental crisis? They want to know if there's not enough places to rent and the rents are going up, where will people go? What do we do about that?
Build more houses.
Build more houses.
So the consensus there was build more houses. The challenge is, you've got a planning and approval process that says we only, we've got enough land is the general view within the government body. The challenge with that is last year, so we need to complete, just to keep up with current demand, almost 3,000 new dwellings per annum. It's a bit more than that. It's about 10 houses a day. But just for the number of people that are coming here, so let's just round it out at 3,000. That means, the number of approvals, our approvals rating is so high compared to completion. So, you know, to get 3,000, we'd almost have to approve 9,000 new lots. So of that, majority being land currently, which again, that mix isn't right. But it doesn't matter how you break it down. The numbers are relevant. Last year, the council only approved 890 lots. We need thousands. So it's a massive and systemic problem. There is a lack of will when it comes to dealing with issues around groups trying to stop development, stop people from coming, and we're just not willing enough. So you can't deal with this will be an ongoing issue for the next 5 years and probably this decade.
What else you got there, Lizzie?
I've got lots coming in. We're struggling with infrastructure already. Can the Sunshine Coast sustain much more development?
We've got to address that one.
Yeah, look, I think that's the often one of the biggest concerns that the community has around development. You know, we find that in all areas we develop across southeast Queensland, there's not too many communities where their base starting places they're really pro-development and increased density, right? Most people want to protect the status quo. You know, my view is that everything was a paddock at some point in time, right? So where we all live, including here in the Sunshine Coast, it didn't look 200 years ago like it looks today. So I think it's an understanding of what really good development and responsible density looks like. And that means strong collaboration between the community, industry and government. And the industry needs to do a lot of heavy lifting. I know there's a lot of talk in the industry about council and governments being a roadblock to future supply and the balance between the infrastructure piece, which is what the question that's been asked. You know, there's been a lot of poor development delivered all around Australia, all around the world for that matter, over a long period of time. So there's a bit of, I believe, trust that's been lost for the community around development and the ability for the community to trust the industry and council will work together for outcomes that benefit everyone and not just developers increasing density. Because if you don't add the infrastructure piece that goes with it, there's not more car spaces, there's not more schools, more shopping centres, more parks, more places for people to exercise, more places to go for a coffee or go out for dinner, then that doesn't benefit the people that are already here. So our view is that there's a lot of major infrastructure projects being built at the moment. The encouraging thing behind the courageous approach that the Sunshine Coast Council has taken over the last 10 years is that then attracts private investment. So a lot of people sitting up here and many other people is the private investment piece invest substantially back into the infrastructure, which ultimately does end up benefiting the community. Because you can't get stuff through these days without your contribution to the infrastructure that benefits the community. But most importantly, the market won't support the project. So the market won't buy your project unless there's something there that you're giving back. So whether that's commercial, or you talk about commercial and retail activating one of your projects in development, or what happens at the street boulevard, or what happens when you go into the land market in providing new roads, new shopping centres and new schools for people. So my view is that it can be managed. It also requires a lot more awareness and conversation around the benefits the community is getting, because quite often we've been pretty poor at doing that in the past.
Thanks, Brooke. What else you got there, Lizzie?
I've got, do you see the Sunshine Coast development on a similar trajectory to what's been experienced in the Gold Coast? And positive and
There's
negative.
always a big fear when I moved here 15 years ago. It was, they're turning it into the Gold Coast. So how do you feel about that? Maybe Josh, or you're about to put people over the line?
We need to build houses, right? We're going to build high-rises.
Yeah, this is true. I think that's a big element. But also, too, the thing is with the Gold Coast, sure, you've got the high rises, but you've also got acres and acres and streets of just suburbs. You know, they're not really anything. They're not high rises, they're not bushland, they're just suburbs. But what would you say to that if people are worried about it turning into the Gold Coast here?
Well, I think, number one, the council and all the associated members of that have done a really good job of planning in terms of height restrictions for a start, if you just look at that element. They're considering, don't overshadow the beaches, keep it open for the afternoon so that there's not that shadow coming in like the Gold Coast. We don't happen to have a casino here either. I think that's a big element that makes the Gold Coast what it is. It attracts a type of demographic that we haven't got here. If you go back a little bit, we're only just being discovered. I call myself we now, I've been here 7 years. But in Victoria, people used to say, oh, the Sunshine Coast. Now, which part of the Gold Coast is that? We're only just being discovered. So the fact that the planning scheme limits the heights of buildings and restricts the density, I think has been well done, so that we don't have to have that fear.
Fair enough. You got another question from online there, Lizzie?
Yes, I've got one from online.
Did anyone want to add to that Gold Coast property line? So
I was just going to say, when you look at the planning here, you know, versus almost the lack of planning that was in place on the Gold Coast, you know, those things, you know, that kind of development just can't happen anymore. You know, the Sunshine Coast is effectively a master plan community with master plan communities amongst it. And so it is very strategic in its planning, which is aimed to allow us to grow, but to retain the things that we love in our identity.
And I think Brooke and I, we all started with a paddock at some point in time, and I think what we've done on the Sunshine Coast is take a lot of learnings from the Gold Coast, and we understand now what we should and shouldn't do. But in 10 years' time, you know, we may be spoken about the same as the Gold Coast, because we're going to continue to learn and get better at what we do collectively in the construction industry. So,
And we're also half the size. You remember Sunshine Coast is now, you know, a fairly significant city. It's the biggest regional city in the country. It's sort of the capital city, so you know, it's over 700,000 people. Whereas Gold Coast, whereas the Sunshine Coast is, you know, nudging 300 as I say. We're less than half the size from a population perspective, and I think, yeah, you just can't approach, even if, you know, we fast forward 25 years from now and the Sunshine Coast reflects 700,000 people, the Sunshine Coast is simply not going to look like the Gold Coast. That creates some challenges in itself that we're talking about housing supply, meeting that growth and demand. How do we meet those challenges of providing density that actually contributes positively back to the community? And that's the path we're on at the moment, that's the challenge in front of us.
and it's challenging land shortages as well. You know, we're getting projects that are getting squashed because they're not seen by the public as being developed correctly. There's there's these projects that we really need urgently, but we're taking time, I guess, to develop them correctly and get the planning on board and make them happen better than they possibly might have if they had been rushed through.
I think that's the thing with Goldie, it's all happened so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 25 years and it's like it went from a couple of beaches to that, and it's such an extraordinary short space of time, and they really rushed through, it was a rush planning kind of thing. Lizzie, what do you got there?
I've got, is it a good time to buy commercial property?
Who's like to respond to that one? Laura's ready to sell some.
Who wants to buy? I think it is because with this transition that's happening, the demographic changing, the way that we are now commuting even or not commuting into Brisbane, for example, right? Where we used to all jump in the car and go to Brisbane. We're not doing that now, so we're shopping locally as well, we're eating locally, we are supporting our local community. So from my perspective, I think it is a great time because once this COVID really lifts and we're all able to really get out and about, I think this is going to be, we're just going to crave it. And so locals are going to be having a wonderful time in commercial.
Just to add to that point, Dan, like we've got a large commercial section that obviously helps people buy and sell commercial properties as well as lease them. I think it's been interesting the last 6 to 9 months working through all the different issues with landlord and tenants, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel now. And I think it's interesting with such low interest rates and the RBA coming in and sort of saying next 3 years we're pretty well sort of locking in rates at that level. It's a pretty attractive time, and banks coming back on board, as I think Brooke sort of said before, like ANZ sort of changing some of their numbers from being -10 to being plus sort of 9% increases in the resi market. It shows the confidence is coming back. So I think, you know, if you're looking at times to buy commercial property, I've had a number of clients going through that process going, okay, I'm going to buy, now's not a bad time. So it's changing.
Would overall, and of course I'm generalising, would commercial property prices have dropped or have risen through the COVID period?
Yeah, I think the numbers are basically that they've not necessarily dropped, but they're basically interest in commercial properties, there's more vacancies. So there might be a small reduction in prices, but you look at all the commercial buildings in and around Mariestow, and you look at the average of what a commercial building sort of rate per metre square, I think it's about sort of 350, 400 metres square in and around. I'm talking commercial buildings, you know, I'm not talking industrial sheds or anything like that, I'm talking like office buildings.
Sure.
You compare that to other states, you compare that to Brisbane, it's an extra $100 a metre square. You compare that to Sydney, you know, go up again, and Melbourne, go up again. We're pretty attractive, and I think at the moment there's some pretty big companies around looking at us going, that's not a bad spot to be.
Yeah.
And you know, with the increase of the city centre, with all the corporations that are coming in and supporting that now, we know that there's quite a few people that jumped straight on board for extra sites in and out around the area off the back of that news. So there's a lot of people think about it.
Okay, all right. What else have you got there, Lizzie?
One specifically for Mal. What will happen after 3 years on the coast? Will the market drop?
Okay, so if you look at what's coming and what's, the reason I say the next 3 years is because it's an irreversible set of circumstances. So it's a very, very positive outcome for those who own property, not so much for those who don't, and not so much for home renters. But that doesn't change overnight over the next 3 years. So if you look at the upswing cycle of the Gold Coast that blew through the 80s, the mid-90s, and Asian currency crises, the recession we had to have, and market crashes, it had a, if you were to add all of those factors and rate them compared to the Sunshine Coast, the Sunshine, you know, and give them a scale, it would have scored 4 out of 10, the Sunshine Coast is 10 out of 10. So I'm not saying that means a 15-year upswing cycle. What I'm saying is I can't see the supply and demand issue being resolved within the next 5 years. I struggle to see it being resolved within the next 10. So on the Gold Coast, through that 15-year cycle, it was resolved in 5. And then it had 5 years of balancing the market and 5 years of speculation driven off the last 10. So, you know, no city in Australia, none of the top 10 cities in Australia has ever seen another supply side of what's on the Sunshine Coast right now.
Okay.
So it's
Okay, prices line.
I've got one about the first home buyers grant. Do you foresee that it will be extended, and then if it's not, will there be an impact when it's not?
We actually had a chat about this thing because,
Yeah,
so
just there.
if we could just rewind back, the grants are worth what up until when?
So the boost is worth 25,000, and you need to have had a signed building contract by 31st of December. At this stage, there's no talk, or there is talk that they're going to extend it, but what that looks like, no one really knows. But I think, in fairness to the government, I can't see them announcing anything until it gets closer. The whole idea of the boost is to stimulate the economy. So in order to do that, they need to create urgency, which they've done really well. So I don't think they'll be announcing anything tomorrow. But I would expect that they will extend it to some area of the market. How and what, I don't know yet. The stimulus, I don't think, has really hit the ground yet. As we were speaking about earlier, construction on all the homes that we've sold to date hasn't really hit the ground yet. So we've still got a long way to go before we start stimulating the construction activity on the ground, supporting the trades and all those people that are building the homes. So yeah, I think there'll be some kind of extension in place. Just couldn't tell you when.
I might add to that if I may. So I think the first homeowners grant obviously is about 15 grand for each sort of first homeowner. You get a discount plus the 25 if you're doing building or renovation. Plus there's the ability to be able to have the 5% deposit down. So it's a pretty attractive package at the moment for first home buyers. I think that's the first thing. I think with grants, I think December is sort of the date that we're waiting to hear, sort of maybe mid-December, whether they're going to extend. I think if you asked us a month ago, we'd probably say it wouldn't have been extended. But I think if you ask us now, there's some pretty strong support to say it's been such a success, the building grant, that they might actually look to extend it. But we should know mid-December.
All right, good to know.
I've got, how can we influence council to fast track property developments?
I think they're trying to answer that question too.
This comes back to the same challenge that we spoke about before, and that is the collaboration between community, industry and council. I think council's been, mostly good in an overarching basis for their 7-year plans, and they adjusted looking at the bigger picture. And we spoke about the fact that we don't want Sunshine Coast to become the Gold Coast. There's no risk of that happening anytime soon. I can tell you, I can't go and develop luxury apartments from Coolum north to Noosa. There's just no capacity in the planning scheme to do it right. There's very, very little opportunity. And even when there is density allowed, most of that density is fairly well controlled. So I think from that side, most of the development density's increased to the south. We've seen around what Stockland is doing at Boccarina and Burtinia and obviously down to Aura. So I think, to fast track development, you've got to understand that fast track development requires a lot of moving parts for that to actually have an impact. And fast tracking means you've got to align the interests of the community with those that have been able to provide housing supply, which creates jobs, which is a massive multiplier for the economy, to making sure that we don't leave buildings that create a poor legacy for the coast, which is, you know, the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. We don't want to be like the Gold Coast. So I think the fast track development is a double-edged sword because it creates a lot of challenge. I think what we need to do is that development that is there is to encourage maybe some of those developers to bring forward that supply, because there's a lot of available projects for development. The challenges are getting those projects to market. So some of that's driven around funding, some of that's driven around market appetite. There are things that the government, local council could do to incentivise making it more attractive to developers to bring that product forward.
We've got a, starts with everyone sitting in this room and how you vote and how you communicate. You know, so, you know, the old story, you don't go to a family dinner and talk about religion or politics. Well, the problem with that is you actually become uninformed and you can't have a robust debate and it becomes a taboo subject. So what happens is we leave for someone else to do. So you've just had a big change in council, and if you look at the majority of those councillors that have been re-elected, they've been re-elected on a platform of no development. So that is bad for this community, and because it's not about a blanket position. You know, we will grow, people will come, people have a right to move here just like everyone, live here just like all of us. What we need to do is ensure that we are adequately representing the community, that we're having an educated and a robust debate about it, that our the people who are responsible for implementing and executing the planning scheme are empowered to do that in accordance with the legislation and that we follow due course. And then, as Brooke has identified, then we can then expedite that process by finding ways to incentivise to get the outcome. But it starts with making sure that as a community we're standing for what we believe and what we want. Because, you know, I'm the father of 6 and I worry about I'm not leaving it up to the kids to find their way. We have to make calls because there are ongoing challenges because of the platform on which our elected officials find their way into making those decisions from time to time. So we're in for an interesting season over the next 4 years at a crisis point in our community. So unless we can convince them to change their view, and it's not about stopping development, it's about positive, constructive development that supports the outcomes of that we all want and desire, and we're going to break it.
Yeah, it's difficult if you're very happy, isn't it? Thank you very much for that. What else have we got?
I've got a few people after some advice. I've got, for a couple in their 30s, no children looking to buy their first home. Again, it's about the suburb, but it's more specific. So what suburb would you recommend? But is it more important the area or size of the home, new build or established?
Well, my view is it's not about the right property, it's about the outcome. If you're looking for something that you're going to live in and you're not looking to move, it's easy enough to get into a property that will stop you from getting into the next property for 7 to 10 years. Every property that you purchase, whether it be an owner-occupier or investment property, is either an enabler or an inhibitor to what you do next. So I would suggest the actual question should be around what's the outcome, because are you better off living in something for 12 months that isn't the ideal property until they either do a second property within 18 to 24 months, and then to keep replicating that until you actually decide where you want to live. So, or rent investing as we call it, or rolling through it. So, you know, are you better to invest rather than just to buy? So it's a really specific question in my view that comes down to sitting down with them and asking a few questions.
Have you got any more, Elsie?
I've got a few. We have a few double ups. I'm just going to have a look through. Okay, what sustainable trends have or will you notice in developing and building property? Are we still taking the bigger the better, more bedrooms, more car parking spots, or more compact minimal designs?
That might be all for you, Josh.
Yep.
Does the environmental factors have much play on design of homes and what you're building?
I think most people want to save the planet and do the right thing, but unfortunately when it comes down to forking out the hard-earned cash to pay for of those benefits, they're not so willing to partake. I think solar at the moment is a massive big one, which is easy and affordable for everyone to get into. So that's got quite a massive uptake at the moment. There's lots of crazy promotions going on with solar at present, but in terms of design and what people are looking for, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule for it, to be honest. I think it just comes down to, again, specifics and what the clients are wanting out of their home.
So it's very client driven.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I feel most of the questions today are very client driven and where they want to be and what their budget is and what they're hoping to achieve.
My brother is about to go to House of Victoria. He has to be 6-star environmental rating. Is that the same in Queensland?
Yeah, that's a pretty standard thing.
So that doesn't mean too much, you reckon?
It means a lot from 10 years ago, but now it's pretty normal. Yeah, it's insulation, it's all those things that we take for granted now. Yeah.
It is good that has been normalised over the last 10 years or so. It has to be a step in the right direction. I'm not sure if it's a cure-all for everything, but it's certainly a good step in the right direction.
Absolutely, your home is just far more comfortable living all around, especially in our climate. So it's a fantastic thing. Again, affordability plays a part in it, so it does tend to push prices up a little bit, but it is a great thing for livability, absolutely.
All right. What else got this?
A follow-up question about the first home buyer grant. Can it be used towards a deposit?
Sorry, can it be used for
Deposit.
deposit?
So generally speaking, if you're getting finance from a bank, it's included in the finance package. It's not usually used as a deposit, the actual first home grant, so we're talking about a $15,000 grant there. What I did mention before was that there's the incentive of 5%, so there's an ability to be able to pay a 5% deposit as a down table instead of 10 or more. That might be what that person's asking that question on. So there's great opportunities. I think first time owners at the moment, first time buyers, sorry, is what Mel was talking about before with sitting down with them and actually showing them how they can get into property. It's such a huge opportunity. Like with a little bit of advice from the right people, the opportunity of getting into the market is kind of now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's users funds to complete. So it then breaks down to what you actually need. So, depending on the circumstances, lenders more insurance, and then eligibility for the grant, you buy property of in the early 400s with about $7,000 deposit. So, with an asterisk and conditions apply to all of that, but that gives you some sort of indication. But yeah, it's really specific to the individual and their circumstances.
Can I add to that? So I think it's an interesting time. We're seeing a lot more parent activity, parents coming in and maybe giving kids sort of loan money, whether that's sort of done properly in the sense of legal documentation or not. We're seeing people invest, maybe investors even come in and give somebody money to buy. There's all sorts of really creative opportunities that I think that are available at the moment for people wanting to try and get into that market.
Okay. What else got there, Lizzie?
A question for Brooke about JobKeeper and unemployment. Unemployment down. How does that impact predictions through the next year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's been lots printed and spoken about. Initially there was a lot of concern about the fiscal cliff that we're going to face at the end of September, and they got pushed out to the end of the year and then to the end of March as the government adjusted policy to suit. I think the thing to keep in mind is that the government is very aware, and I think the RBA has made clear for the first time in a long time that what is most important is to get back to full employment and to eventually start to target inflation and inflation overshooting, which means the RBA will eventually let inflation, if they can stoke it, to go beyond what they normally be comfortable with. So my view around the JobKeeper piece is that it's been a really effective policy, extremely challenging to be able to respond so quickly to a crisis that couldn't have been foreseen of that magnitude. You remember the fall in GDP was the greatest since the 1930s, so it was a substantial event and it was a substantial shock based on basically governments around the world completely shutting down economies to deal with the health crisis. So when you look at the effectiveness of the combination between both the fiscal, which is your government, and then your central bank response, central bank, RBA and government aren't normally that collaborative. They're very independent in their views, particularly when it comes to printing money, but the RBA has made it extremely clear that they will provide unlimited liquidity to make sure that the bank's in a position to lend money at a low cost. They've made it clear they're going to buy about $100 billion worth of bonds between now and March. So since they made that statement 3 weeks ago, they purchased about 14 billion. That'll go to about 100 billion by March, which means alone about 17% of all the government debt issued through government bonds. So what that tells you is there's a very strong commitment for both the government and the RBA to provide liquidity, and the government's role in all that is making sure that the unwinding of these policies, these fiscal policies, including JobKeeper, are done in such a way that we don't run into a fiscal cliff. Does that make sense? So my view is there'll be some people that will be impacted more so. I think that the key period to watch for is that April, September next year. There'll be some people that have been holding on through that period through support that might not anymore, and that'll include some small businesses, particularly in hospitality. I really feel for those guys, and in particular down in Victoria. I do expect to see finally some liquidations and people going into administration in that period of time, but I don't think that has a broad-scale impact on the recovery. I think the trajectory we're on and the way that our government has managed the response has been exemplary.
All right. And I should check out for time. Is there? Are we?
We'll do a couple more questions.
Great. All right. Cool.
Someone would like to know what each of you would be interested in investing, or are you investing right now?
Good question.
You're up, Lorna.
Okay. Obviously, I'm investing in my own or our own projects. There's always a group of us that are doing it. But I think diversification is one of the things that I would encourage people to do, because it's all right to have a strategy, and it could be something as simple as duplexes, and you go down that path. But I think what we've got to do is also diversify across, and consider commercial, or consider doing some longer term type of uses. I think it's about utilising your funds too. People sit there with, they're sitting on their assets basically, and not doing something with their equity, for example, or their superannuation. And there's different models that can roll out with the use of those that are really going to set you up well for retirement. And I guess that's not going to retire, but that's the long-term game, right? So it's not about what would I particularly invest in, it's about what is my strategy, what would I apply to it, because I do something totally different with a super than I would with cash, or using lots of different strategies. It might be a syndication. We do a lot of that as well. So I think everyone is an individual. I try to have broad spread, even though there's my niche. But I think the best thing you can do is diversify, and that sort of helps protect you too against different things where trends might change or economies might change. You've got that leverage across those areas.
On a personal level, yeah, 100% investing in property pretty regularly. It's something I'm very passionate about. Obviously, trying to manage a building company, so love the process, love all about it. And I'm exceptionally fond of the Sunshine Coast. I've been around Melbourne for a very long time, and I just understand what we've got in place here on the Sunshine Coast. So I'm all about property. Love building houses and investment property. So yeah, personally, 100%.
Well, I think from my point of view, we're very lucky doing what I do with the firm that I'm in, because we get to see a lot of different people doing a lot of different things with their money. So we get to see investors coming in there, and whether it's the 30-year-old investors who've got 10 properties and a big share portfolio, and you get to see how they've got that. And it's as Lorna said, they've been smart with the use of their money. They've looked at how they can utilise their funds, and whether it's buying a block of land from a developer and then putting an alternate home on it and selling it to a super fund at sort of a small scale, right the way up to people that have obviously got more funds and they're buying, whether it's commercial property or buying a development site and doing development. So I think it's a very specific question and not one that's easy to answer, other than to say there are so many opportunities right in front of us on the coast and elsewhere as well, depending on your specific circumstance. And I think the big one is utilise your money, which is what Lorna said. Whether it's equity, you've got all serviceability. So if you've got the money to be able to pay, the bank loan and don't quite have the cash to the bank account, you can joint venture with someone and obviously make a deal together. So I think there's great opportunities in the market at the moment, with a positive market that's looking to go up. And then, you know, with the right sort of, maybe a few grey hairs and sort of people telling you what to do and how to do it, and any specific circumstances, there's lots of opportunity.
We've still got a lot of early going. It's been able to get a property people. All I'll say on past that, you know, there's people on this panel that are better placed to give individual advice on individual circumstances. I think the one thing I'll leave everyone with tonight is just understanding that the way the game is set up, and I'm talking about the game of the economy and for all of our endeavours over time, is to get to a point where you don't have to work as hard to be able to provide for your family and to live a comfortable retirement. I think we understand that the system's set up to tax the productive part of our economy, which is tax wages, but it doesn't very heavily tax land, which is a failure. If you were starting again, you wouldn't set the taxation system up like that. But when you understand that that's the case, and all of the productive gains, you talk about all this major infrastructure project and the private investment that follows, all of those gains over time go to land because we all benefit from it. So it gets paid for by the public purse, which gets taxed by the person who's got to go to work every day, but the real benefit goes to those that hold the underlying asset, because you're able to securitise that asset, get a mortgage against it, and over time all the gains of all the money that we all pay for collectively through our taxes go to security that's underpinned by land. So at some point in time, it's, you know, you work hard, you save, you increase your knowledge, you get exposure to people that know more than you, but you just make a start. And making a start is understanding that at some point in time you've got to have exposure to assets that are underpinned by land, because that's where all the gains, all the productive gains in society go. And so you want to be part of that, because otherwise you're going to work for the rest of your life and get taxed heavily and not end up in a comfortable retirement.
Yeah, what he said.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Have we got another question?
I think I'll do one final combination question. So a lot of people are asking about interest rates. How long will they stay at record lows for, and what does that show about the economy?
Okay, so there's a couple of thoughts there. The first one is, so there's a couple of things when you talk about modelling and looking at information differently. I sent an email to the team on the 26th of March when 100,000 Australians are going to die, saying they'll have notification about easing by Anzac Day. It's not because I'm brilliant or super clever or other work things out other than anyone else. It's about the modelling you use to determine information trends and what those potential courses are, and then you can make an assessment around what you think the most likely course is. In 2010, I sent an email to the team saying that interest rates will be less than 5% for the next 15 years. How many economists have you heard say that? The answer is none. Particularly back then, a few would probably agree with that now with 10 years of hindsight. Again, but I'm also subscribe to the view that economics theory isn't. If you look at how long we've looked at rejecting GDP as a measure, it's only to come out of the Great Depression as a short-term measure to determine growth. For 5,500 years, however long you want to work it out to be, but many thousand years, economics was a philosophy around how we create a positive outcome for our society. So how does trade work? It's only been in the last 70 years that we've applied it to GDP and a whole range of other theories. And my view of that is, if you look through the GFC and some of the things they've had through COVID and the like, well, I would suggest that they've been proven wrong. So my view on that then is what an interest rate is going to be. Interest rates in Forex calling is a fool's game, but my view is that I see that we'll have very low rates for at least the next 3 years, probably the next 5. I struggle to see them getting back over 5% within the next 5 years, but it is possible. So that was a lot of information in a detailed answer, but it's there's again a lot of discussion around it, but just go back and look at what people have said over time, who's been saying what and how accurate they've been in relation to those calls, as to what you want to back.
Yeah, look, I think, and thanks, Carl, the other one just to look at quite simply is what's, you know, where are we at in the cycle and what's really important from a policy perspective. And the greatest holders of debt around the world, apart from the individual, is obviously government, right? So most governments around the world are heavily indebted and have gone into much more debt to be able to deal with this latest crisis. And it won't be the last crisis we deal with, right? So they seem to turn up a lot more frequently than we once imagined. So, what that means is the only way to fund your way out of that debt at some point in time is to keep the cost of that debt extremely low and to hope that you can stoke some mild inflation without getting away on you, and hope that GDP eventually erodes the value of that debt, or at least enables you to manage it until such times they need to go back into more debt. So my view is that there's a pretty clear mandate. You see the targeting of bonds out to 5 and 10 years now. So a lot longer dated bonds being targeted by most central banks in purchasing those government bonds, and that's to keep the interest rate lower for longer. So all that means is the governments very clearly understand that with the amount of debt that the individual has, but most importantly the governments all own around the world, so most of the central banks own most of the government debt, they cannot afford for that debt to cost them more than it does now. So there's a lot more funding out the other side of this to create jobs and to get back to, I guess, close to full employment. Might take some time in the Northern Hemisphere, but my view is that there's a very clear mandate that interest rates will stay low for longer because that's what's required.
All right.
All right, well, we have learned a lot. I have learned, I'm going to go home and get really busy right now tonight. I'm going to go buy some properties.
I told you before, I invested heavily in Townsville properties. So I'm fine.
But there's so much to be learned. But if we could just ask everyone, we'll go through what's the one takeaway you think that everyone should have from tonight?
Just get involved.
Yep, that's the summary of it. It's you're better in the market than out of the market in a market like this. That is not true of everywhere, but it's hard to get it dramatically wrong. It's just about doing better than what you think you can.
And it's always time, isn't it? You know, as you've all been reiterating, but you buy now and it feels big, but in 10 years it won't feel big. You'll be, wow, great decision in 2020.
Did you want to add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I just think it's probably getting market ready. Would be a big point that I'd like to make to everyone, which is, as Warner have put before, is I think everyone should go through and make sure that they've had their conversations with their bank and their brokers and people in that sort of position. Look at, what equity that they do have. What serviceability do they do have? Make sure you go and look at your portfolio as it currently is, and is it in a good way? Does it need this being sold? Is it stable? Have you got asset protection? It's all those sort of things. We've found over COVID, it's really been interesting. We've had a lot of work coming into our office, which is just restructuring where people have been cleaning up the back of the house. And by that I mean, they'll have things that they haven't done, and then now they go back and clean those up so they can go forward and make their next property acquisition. So do that now, so that you're ready to go when you find your property. That'll be my big tip.
And what about your tip there, Josh?
Yeah, I'm on the same bench. I think you need to start asking I'll start having a conversation now. Get your own little panel of experts from family and friends and then ask the questions. You never know unless you ask, so the only silly question is the one you don't ask. So get your own little network together, ask the questions from your close friends, your neighbour, and just start asking. You won't know until you find out.
What about you, Lorna? What's your takeaway from tonight?
I suggest you don't go to the barbecue and talk about property. I suggest that you actually, same thing, but seek out those that have gone before you, those that have been successful. Surround yourself with people that know what they're doing and they've got the evidence of knowing what they're doing. Because everyone's an expert when it comes to property, right? Especially the barbecue. So it's really important. And the other thing I'd say is, I bought my first property at 18. It was $4,000. That's a lot of money back then. That's how old I am. But it's having a go. I had no idea how I was going to achieve that. That big price of $4,000. So you look back and you laugh. But we'll be looking back before too long and laughing at these prices, because right now, Melbourne and Sydney are laughing at these prices. So get in.
Yeah, we are sitting where, I think you tell the story from years ago where there was land for sale this year and it was $80,000 a piece of
Does anyone know where Shrapnel Ave is on the top of Budra? When my husband and I first saw that property, it was land without a house, and it was $180,000. Honestly, John went, what was this? If he was going to pay $180,000 for a block of land, and that was viewed 360-degree views of the coast.
We actually looked there before we bought our house, Shrapnel, and they're all $1 million plus.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Anyway, that's You know
Right
what?
hands down.
We can do a whole lot on the big dumb pizza.
How many times we've done that?
So look, we have had an opportunity to hear from all of these guys, but I know a lot of people would probably want to get some more information. So each of you should have received a card on your way in, and on that card is a QR code that you can scan with your phone's camera. Now, if that tech goes out straight in your head, although it shouldn't, because if you've been to a restaurant during COVID, that's how we all got comfortable with scanning codes. But it will take you to a page with links and offers from the panelists here tonight.
Yeah, so that's super easy. Plus, there's some virtual show bags in there. Offers including access to a free ebook from the Direct Collective and much more of the stats and some of the game-changing information that's been mentioned tonight. Also discounts to direct hotels and more supporting partners. So just follow that link. That's your next step to take some action on some of the information that you've learned about tonight.
All right, now we are going to do our raffle draw. Now it's not glitchy, but we just did it before because it was expedient because everyone had already logged on. So Lizzie can't go in the raffle winner. It is someone called Calvin Kong.
Calvin, where are you? Where's Calvin? Where are you?
Well done. Well done for turning up.
Yeah.
That's how you won the prize.
Okay, now the funds raised from the raffle, very happy that you all bought a ticket because it's going directly to Destiny Rescue, who are an incredible charity that exists to end child sexual exploitation and slavery, which obviously is a plague around the world, and those guys do incredible work. So thank you for your support there.
And Calvin has won tonight a Taste of the Sunshine Coast holiday pack. Now, we've been here all night about how great the coast is and how you can enjoy it. So excellent time here. So Calvin's one from Direct Hotels, beautiful Sunshine Coast accommodation. Aqueduct has given a family pass. Sea Life has given a family pass. Raw Energy has provided vouchers for great fruit and smoothies. And White's IGA has provided the beautiful local boy hamper full of delicious local goodies.
Thank you very much to all our supporters. Once again, big round of applause for our panelists. I think they've got some great info there. Thank you, team. And panelists will be sticking around a little longer, and the Direct Collective teams are here too. So if you have a question or you want to follow up some of the ideas that are going on, just the trick is though to obviously get your cards sorted out and make sure you check it out online. There will be available to check it out online another time. Thank you to everyone that supported it tonight online as well. We really appreciate that. And of course, we're going to be in bed in about 5 minutes time, Caroline, to get up tomorrow and do our breakfast show. So feel free to join in on that one. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.